Maya Hassan had long known that life could be merciless. As a single mother struggling to provide for her young son Adam, she had weathered hardship after hardship. Overdue bills, the looming threat of eviction, and the constant gnawing worry over whether there would be enough food on the table had pushed her to the very edge. One desperate day, with no other option in sight, Maya found herself agreeing to participate in an unthinkable auction, an event where impoverished women were put up for bid-like objects, their fates sealed by the offers of wealthy, powerful men. The auction took place in an opulent hall that, despite its grandeur, felt cold and unwelcoming. Glittering chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting prismatic lights on walls draped in expensive fabrics. Yet, every shimmering detail only served to emphasize the stark contrast between the luxurious setting and the raw vulnerability of the women displayed on stage. Maya sat in a secluded corner, her heart pounding in her chest, feeling every bit the object of scrutiny and pity. The air was thick with tension as the event organizer, a man in a perfectly tailored suit, his smile forced and hollow, repeated instructions for the women. Keep your composure, smile, and do not make eye contact with the guests. His words echoed in Maya's mind, a cruel reminder of the degrading spectacle she was about to endure. When Maya's name was finally called, "Lot number 23, her pulse skyrocketed. With trembling legs, she ascended the stage under the harsh glare of intense spotlights. The bright lights seemed to strip away every ounce of dignity she had left, leaving her exposed before a sea of elegantly dressed men whose eyes devoured every detail of her appearance. Each gaze felt predatory, as if they were not looking at a person, but at a prize to be won. Despite the overwhelming fear and humiliation, a part of her clung to a desperate hope. That perhaps this terrible auction might offer a lifeline, a way to secure a future for Adam. Just as Maya reached the center of the stage, a deep, commanding voice resonated throughout the hall, silencing the murmurs of the audience. $1 million, the voice declared, its tone firm and resolute. All eyes turned toward the source of the announcement. Seated at the far end of the hall was a distinguished man with tanned skin, piercing eyes, and an aura of absolute authority. This was Zaid al-Mansour, an Arab billionaire whose reputation for vast wealth and discreet power was known far and wide. The organizer's voice repeated the bid, confirming the staggering sum, and with a final decisive word, "Sold." Maya's fate was sealed. A heavy silence fell over the hall as Maya descended from the stage, each step laden with dread and resignation. Her mind raced with thoughts of her son Adam and the sacrifices she had already made, now compounded by the grim reality that her life was about to change irrevocably. In a private room away from prying eyes, Zaid awaited her with an expression that was both inscrutable and severe. His presence dominated the space, and without a hint of warmth, he extended a hand as if to claim not only her compliance, but her very future. "Let us discuss the terms," Zaid said, his voice cool and devoid of any emotion. He gestured toward an elegantly furnished table where an envelope lay waiting. Maya's hands shook uncontrollably as she took the document. The contract, written in precise, unyielding language, spelled out the terms of their agreement. Maya was to bear Zaid's child, and upon the child's birth, she would relinquish all rights, leaving him with sole claim to the heir. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. "You want me to have a child for you, and then to abandon my own flesh and blood?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, trembling with a mix of anger and despair. Zaid's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening further. "You entered this auction knowing full well the conditions. I paid $1 million for you, Maya," he stated curtly. "There is no room for regret. You have chosen this path, and now you must honor it." His tone brooked no argument, and in that moment, Maya realized that her desperate decision had sealed her fate. With a heavy heart, burdened by the knowledge that her sacrifice was not a choice but a necessity, she signed the contract. As the ink dried on the paper, a profound sense of finality washed over her. a finality that would forever alter the course of her life and that of her beloved son. Maya left the room that day, a captive of destiny, her every step echoing with the weight of her decision. Unbeknownst to her, the seeds of a complex, tumultuous future had been sown, a future in which her pain and sacrifice would eventually lead to unexpected connections, and where even the coldest of contracts might one day be transformed by the power of genuine emotion. Maya left the private room with the contract clutched tightly in her trembling hands, the weight of her decision pressing upon her like an iron shroud. In the dim light of the corridor, every step toward the exit felt like a march toward an uncertain fate. Outside, a sleek black limousine awaited her. The driver's polite nod did little to ease the turmoil churning within her. As the vehicle glided away from the dilapidated building that had been her home, Maya stole one last glance at the place where countless memories of hardship and sacrifice resided. Her heart ached at the thought of leaving behind the modest life she knew. Yet the promise of financial relief and a stable future for her son, Adam, left her with no alternative. The cityscape transformed gradually as the limousine traveled through bustling neighborhoods into a realm of modern skyscrapers and pristine avenues. The harsh realities of her past faded into the background, replaced by the gleaming reflections of a world that seemed both alien and alluring. Soon, the vehicle came to a stop before an imposing mansion. Towering iron gates swung open to reveal meticulously trimmed gardens and a stately facade that combined traditional Arab architectural elegance with hints of contemporary luxury. This was the new domain of Zaid al-Mansour, a realm where every detail was controlled, every moment predetermined. At the entrance, Zaid stood waiting, his expression unreadable yet firm. His gaze met Maya's with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. Without a word of welcome, he led her through the grand foyer, where polished marble floors, opulent chandeliers, and intricate mosaic patterns spoke of unimaginable wealth. The contrast between the lavish surroundings and the simple, battered life Maya had known was overwhelming. Zaid's voice, measured and cool, announced, "Your accommodations have been prepared. Follow me." As they walked, the mansion's corridors revealed rooms filled with antique furniture, lush Persian rugs, and expansive windows that offered glimpses of serene, landscaped gardens. In a quiet wing of the mansion, Maya was introduced to Amira, a kindly, middle-aged woman with a gentle smile who immediately assumed the role of her caretaker. Amira guided Maya to a private room that had been set aside for her. The room, decorated in soft hues of cream and gold, boasted a comfortable bed adorned with silk sheets and a small writing desk by the window. Yet, despite the beauty and comfort that surrounded her, Maya could not shake the feeling of displacement. Every luxurious detail reminded her that she was an outsider in this extravagant world, a world dictated by a contract she had no power to change. After settling in, Maya found herself alone in the vast silence of her new environment. Nightfall came slowly, and as darkness enveloped the mansion, she stepped onto her small private balcony. The cool air of the desert mingled with the soft hum of distant city life, a stark reminder that even in opulence, the passage of time remained relentless. Her thoughts turned to Adam, his laughter, his innocent smiles, and the endless worries about how he would cope without her constant presence. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away, steeling herself with the determination that had driven her to make this agonizing choice. The next morning, the routine began without fanfare. Zaid's instructions were delivered in a tone that brooked no dissent. Maya was to report to the mansion's administrative office at precisely 8 a.m. for the commencement of the mandatory medical examinations. Every minute of her day would be governed by a strict schedule. In the sterile, elegantly furnished room where the examination took place, Maya was treated with a detached professionalism. The doctor, a calm and efficient man, assured her that everything was in order for the process to begin. Yet, beneath the clinical reassurance, Maya felt an undercurrent of foreboding, as if the very act of being examined was a prelude to the irrevocable transformation of her life. Throughout the day, Maya was introduced to various facets of the mansion's operation. Staff members moved with quiet efficiency, their expressions polite but distant. She was shown the library, the expansive dining hall, and even a small lounge where she could rest. Each room, designed with meticulous care, reminded her of the price of the contract she had signed, a price paid in both dignity and the irrevocable bond to a future she had never chosen freely. That evening, as she sat alone in her room, attempting to muster a semblance of peace, Maya could not help but feel that every luxurious detail was imbued with a bittersweet irony. The soft, ambient lighting and plush furnishings offered comfort, yet they were a stark contrast to the raw, painful reality of her sacrifice. As she gazed out at the distant city lights shimmering over the desert, the enormity of her new life began to sink in. She had been swept away into a world of unimaginable opulence, but at the cost of her autonomy, a cost that loomed as a silent promise of further trials in the days to come. In that moment of solitude, Maya resolved to face whatever lay ahead with the same fierce determination that had carried her through years of struggle. Even if the mansion's grandeur could never erase the memories of her past, she would endure, not just for herself, but for the sake of her son. And though the contract's terms were unyielding, a small, stubborn hope flickered within her. A hope that perhaps, amidst the rigid schedules and relentless expectations, there might one day be a chance for change. Maya spent the first few days in the mansion navigating a world that was as bewildering as it was opulent. Every corner of the sprawling estate seemed meticulously designed to impress and intimidate in equal measure. With a schedule laid out like clockwork, Maya found herself waking up at precisely 7 a.m., escorted by Amira, her kindly caretaker, to begin her daily routine. The morning light, filtered through rich draperies, revealed rooms adorned with plush furniture, intricate rugs, and delicate artwork, an environment that was as far removed from her modest past as it could be. At first, Maya felt like an unwelcome guest in a place where every detail was dictated by someone else's will. She moved silently through the mansion's corridors, her footsteps echoing on polished marble floors, while the soft murmur of staff and the distant hum of conversations at formal gatherings only heightened her sense of isolation. In the midst of lavish dining halls and expansive lounges, she often found herself staring blankly out of tall, arched windows that overlooked the perfectly manicured gardens, wondering if this luxurious prison could ever feel like home. Yet, as the days unfolded, subtle signs of change began to emerge. One afternoon, while wandering the garden in search of a quiet refuge, Maya noticed Zaid near a secluded fountain, tenderly watering a rare orchid with painstaking care. His usual imposing demeanor softened for a moment as he murmured, "This orchid was my mother's favorite. It reminds me that beauty can thrive even in the harshest conditions." The sight struck Maya deeply. Here was a man known for his ruthless efficiency and cold resolve, now revealing a glimpse of vulnerable humanity. Though she quickly looked away, that fleeting moment ignited a spark of curiosity within her. At dinner gatherings held in the mansion's grand dining room, Maya began to notice that the guests' curious glances and hushed whispers were not always meant to humiliate her. Instead, some of them carried an unspoken respect, as if they recognized her resilience. Zaid, ever attentive to the proceedings, would occasionally lean in with a word of encouragement, or in rare instances, ask her opinion about a seemingly trivial matter. "Maya, what do you think of the new artwork in the hall?" he once inquired, his tone unexpectedly gentle. Though his question was brief, it planted a seed of possibility in her heart, that perhaps she was more than a commodity, that her voice might eventually carry meaning in this vast, alien world. In the quiet moments of the early evening, when the mansion's opulence softened into the gentle hues of dusk, transformative emotions that threatened to redefine their future. In that fragile balance of defiance and desire, the mansion became not only a monument to wealth and control, but also the crucible in which the possibility of genuine human connection was being forged. One stormy evening, As dark clouds gathered above the mansion and rain pounded relentlessly against tall windows, the atmosphere in the private study grew charged with a tension that could no longer be ignored. Zaid and Maya found themselves alone in that dimly lit room, the only sound the soft patter of rain and the distant hum of the mansion settling into quiet. The silence between them had grown heavy over the past weeks, laden with unspoken truths and suppressed emotions. Finally, unable to bear the weight any longer, Zaid's guarded demeanor cracked. "Maya, I need to understand. There's something in your eyes. Something you're not telling me," Zaid said, his voice low and tinged with genuine concern. His words, though hesitant, carried the force of a man finally willing to confront his own internal conflict. Maya's eyes, damp with unshed tears and flickering with the pain of buried secrets, shifted downward. After a long, tremulous pause, she began to speak in a voice that quivered between anger and sorrow. "I did not come to this place solely because of financial desperation," Maya confessed softly. "Every decision, every sacrifice I've made has been for my son, Adam. The auction, this contract, it wasn't just about securing money. It was about ensuring he would never go hungry, that he'd have a chance at a better life. I agreed to this deal because I had no other choice. But you, your coldness, your strict adherence to the terms, you never considered the full cost of what you were asking of me." Zaid's face, normally an impenetrable mask of authority, showed a flicker of regret. I never meant for you to feel that way," he admitted, his voice breaking ever so slightly. "I always saw this as a transaction, a necessary step to secure an heir, to continue my legacy. I did not consider the human cost, the sacrifices you had to make, until now." His eyes searched hers, as if looking for some sign that she might forgive him for the inadvertent cruelty of his actions. Maya's expression hardened as she recalled years of struggle, the countless nights of worry over overdue bills, the constant fear of eviction, and the bitter loneliness of watching her son sleep without her by his side. "You talk about legacy," she said, her tone both accusatory and pained. "But what about the legacy of a mother's love? What about the heart you trampled in your relentless pursuit of power and wealth?" Her words, though soft, resonated with the raw power of truth. "I sacrificed everything for Adam, and now you expect me to simply accept that I must bear your child and then relinquish my rights, as if my own blood and love could be traded like merchandise?" The room fell silent as Zaid absorbed her words. The storm outside mirrored the turbulence inside him. For the first time, the billionaire felt the crushing burden of his past actions, actions that had been justified by the cold calculus of business, but now, in the light of Maya's pain, revealed themselves as irreparable wounds inflicted on a human soul. "Maya, I have built my life on control and precision, believing that every sacrifice was necessary," he murmured, almost to himself. "But now I see that I have underestimated the cost. Your suffering, it has awakened something within me, a realization that my ambition has left scars not only on you, but on many others." Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she listened, her heart aching with both sorrow and a tentative hope that perhaps change was possible. "I don't expect you to fix everything overnight," she whispered, "but you must understand that I can never simply erase the pain I've endured. I need you to see me, not as a piece in a transaction, but as a mother who has given everything for her child." Her voice trembled with the weight of a lifetime of sacrifice, and the desperation of a heart that had longed to be understood. Zaid reached out, his hand hovering uncertainly before finally resting on hers. In that moment, the distance between them seemed to shrink, as if the raw honesty of Maya's confession had built a fragile bridge between their disparate worlds. "I promise," Zaid said quietly, his voice earnest and low. "I will try to make amends. I want to understand your pain and do whatever it takes to ease it. I know I cannot undo the past, but I want to build a future where you are not just a part of my plan, but a person I value for who you are." The admission, Simple yet profound, stirred something deep within Maya. Though her heart remained heavy with memories of loss and sacrifice, she felt a glimmer of hope, a fragile spark that maybe, just maybe, Zaid was beginning to change. Yet, the harsh reality of the contract still loomed over them like a spectre. Their future, for now, was tethered to an agreement that had brought them together under duress. As the storm outside began to subside and the first faint rays of dawn filtered through the curtains, both Maya and Zaid sat in contemplative silence. The conversation had left them raw and exposed, but it also marked the beginning of an evolution in their relationship. The cold, unyielding terms of the contract were slowly losing their power, replaced by a growing awareness of the true cost of their choices. In that quiet, transformative moment, Maya realized that though she had entered into this arrangement out of sheer necessity, it might also be the catalyst for a deeper, more genuine connection. And for Zaid, the unveiling of Maya's secret had shattered the illusion of control he had long clung to, opening the door to the possibility of redemption and change, a possibility that was both frightening and, in its own way, profoundly liberating. In the days following that raw confession, a palpable change began to ripple through the mansion's cold corridors. Zaid al-Mansour, once the epitome of ruthless control, now found himself wrestling with the heavy burden of guilt and the stirring desire to amend his past misdeeds. Determined to prove that he could be more than the sum of his calculated ambitions, he initiated a series of subtle yet sincere actions aimed at redemption. Every morning, as the first light crept over the horizon, Zaid would sit at his massive desk in the study and review accounts of his past business dealings, a self-imposed audit to understand the full extent of the damage his empire had wrought. The faces and stories of those affected, which he had long dismissed as collateral in the pursuit of wealth, now haunted him with every page. One afternoon, Zaid arranged to meet with several families whose lives had been shattered by his aggressive acquisitions. Dressed in a somber suit and with an expression that betrayed neither arrogance nor indifference, he visited a modest home in a rundown district, a stark contrast to the opulence of his own world. There, he listened intently as a father recounted how his business had been ruined and how the ensuing hardships led to irreparable losses. Zaid's heart, long armored by ambition, began to crack as he offered apologies and, more importantly, tangible assistance. He pledged compensation, not as an afterthought, but as a genuine effort to rebuild what had been destroyed. Each conversation, filled with raw emotion and quiet forgiveness, chipped away at the rigid persona he had built around himself. Back at the mansion, the transformation in Zaid was slowly mirrored by changes in the atmosphere. The once sterile, oppressive halls began to feel warmer, as if the mansion itself sensed the shift. He started to revise the harsh terms of the contract that bound Maya Hassan. In discreet meetings with his legal team, Zaid amended several clauses to grant Maya more freedom, ensuring that she could maintain regular contact with her son, Adam, and have a say in matters concerning her own well-being. When he presented the updated document to Maya, his eyes held a mix of vulnerability and hope. "This is not merely about fulfilling an obligation," he said in a quiet, earnest tone. "It is about recognizing your sacrifice and ensuring that you are not just a part of my plan, but a person whose dignity I respect." Although Maya's heart remained cautious from years of hardship, she saw in his words the promise of a future where she might reclaim a measure of control over her own life. Simultaneously, Zaid began including Maya in aspects of his world that had previously been strictly his domain. At business luncheons and charity events, he invited her to join him, not as a subordinate forced to follow orders, but as a companion whose perspective he now genuinely valued. Their conversations, once stilted and dominated by the cold language of contracts, gradually deepened. In quiet moments spent in the mansion's expansive library or while walking side by side through the lush gardens, both revealed fragments of their pasts. Maya spoke softly about the endless nights of worry for Adam, the sacrifices that had sculpted her resilience, and the profound loneliness of watching her son grow up without her constant presence. Zaid, in turn, disclosed the pressures of maintaining a legacy built on unforgiving business practices, and the long-held burden of familial expectations that had kept him emotionally distant for so long. During one particularly serene evening on the terrace, as the desert wind whispered through the palms and the fading sunlight painted the sky in hues of amber and rose, Zaid's previously impenetrable facade finally gave way. He looked out over the sprawling estate, then turned to Maya with an intensity that was both raw and sincere. "I have spent my entire life believing that control and precision were the only paths to success," he said softly. "But I now see that true strength lies in acknowledging our mistakes and embracing the vulnerability that comes with change." His admission resonated deeply within Maya, stirring emotions that had long lain dormant beneath layers of pain and distrust. In that moment, the mansion, with all its opulence and rigidity, transformed into a crucible for renewal, a place where broken souls might learn to heal. Yet, even as hope began to kindle, the spectre of the original contract still loomed, a constant reminder of the cruel bargain that had forced them together. Both knew that the scars of their past choices would not vanish overnight. Every gentle gesture, every shared secret in the quiet corners of the mansion, was an act of defiance against the cold terms that had once defined their existence. The process of redemption was painstakingly slow and fraught with setbacks, but each small step, each apology, each revised clause, each tender moment of understanding, moved them closer to a future unbound by obligation. In the weeks that followed, as Zaid's transformation became more evident, the mansion itself seemed to breathe with a renewed energy. The once echoing halls filled with a subtle warmth, as if the very walls were witness to the possibility of genuine change. Maya, though still guarded, began to allow herself to imagine a life where the past did not forever dictate her future. And Zaid, for the first time in his life, dared to hope that his pursuit of redemption might lead not only to the mending of broken relationships, but to the creation of something truly lasting, a connection built on empathy, respect, and, perhaps, even love. In the final days of the contract, an air of bittersweet anticipation settled over the mansion. The grand estate, which had once served as a cold reminder of Maya's sacrifice and Zaid's unyielding control, now resonated with the gentle pulse of transformation. One clear morning, as soft light streamed through ornate windows, Zaid called Maya into his private study. The room, once intimidating in its severity, now felt intimate, a sanctuary where raw truth could be spoken without pretense. With eyes that shone with both remorse and hope, Zaid spoke in a voice that trembled with sincerity. "Maya, the contract that bound us was never meant to define our worth. I have come to understand that no piece of paper can measure the depth of your sacrifice or the strength of your spirit. I want you to know that I no longer wish to be governed by that cold agreement." Maya, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and trepidation, listened as Zaid continued. "I have seen the pain in your eyes, the struggle you endure every day, and I have come to realize that the future we face together can be built on trust and love, rather than obligations and control." In that moment, Zaid reached for a folder resting on his desk, filled with the very contract that had dictated their fates. With deliberate calm, he tore the document into small pieces, letting the fragments fall silently to the floor. The sound of paper crumpling filled the room, a final, symbolic act of liberation from the harsh terms that had once defined their lives. Maya's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she slowly absorbed the magnitude of his gesture. For years, she had carried the heavy burden of her decision, the memory of the auction and the cold contract haunting her every step. Now, faced with Zaid's willingness to renounce the deal, she felt a stirring of hope, a possibility that perhaps she could reclaim her dignity and forge a future where she was seen not as a commodity, but as a person worthy of respect and love. In the days that followed, the atmosphere of the mansion began to change perceptibly. The vast corridors that had echoed with the sounds of loneliness and strict routine now buzzed with a newfound warmth. Zaid made it his priority to include Maya in every facet of his world. No longer did he treat her as an accessory to be managed. Instead, he sought her opinions during business luncheons, invited her to charity events as a valued companion, and ensured that her visits with Adam, her son, were not only permitted but encouraged. The revised terms of their arrangement were formalized in a new agreement that granted Maya greater autonomy and secure, regular contact with her beloved child. A small but significant step toward restoring what had once been lost. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and bathed the mansion's gardens in a soft, golden glow, Zaid and Maya found themselves walking side by side along a cobblestone path lined with fragrant blooms. The air was cool and carried the promise of a gentle night. They spoke quietly about trivial things at first. The vibrant colors of the flowers, the rustle of the palm fronds in the evening breeze. But soon the conversation deepened. Maya retreated to her room. There, she would sit on the window seat, gazing out over the estate with a mingling of awe and melancholy. The luxurious silks and velvets surrounding her were a stark contrast to the rugged fabric of her previous life. Yet they did little to soothe the ache of separation from Adam, her son. Every day she dialed his number, and each time his cheerful voice brought both comfort and a pang of guilt. The realization that her choice to sign the contract had created this permanent division between them weighed heavily on her, even as she forced herself to adapt to the mansion's regimented lifestyle. Amira, who became both friend and surrogate mentor, often joined Maya for long walks along the mansion's private pathways. Over cups of herbal tea in the cool shade of ancient trees, Amira shared stories of her own trials and the small victories that had sustained her through years of hardship. Sometimes, Amira confided softly, we find strength in the most unexpected places. This mansion may be grand, but it is the small acts of kindness that make it a home. Maya clung to these words as a lifeline, allowing them to briefly dispel the darkness that often clouded her thoughts. Despite the unyielding schedule and the omnipresent contract, there were moments when Maya felt a stirring of hope. In one instance, she discovered a hidden nook in the library, a quiet alcove with a plush armchair and a shelf of well-worn novels. There, amidst the silence and the musty scent of old paper, she found solace and the freedom to lose herself in stories far removed from her reality. It was in those rare hours of solitude that she allowed herself to dream of a future where her life might regain some semblance of control, where the contract would not forever define her existence. As the days turned into a week, the rigid structure of Maya's new life began to show cracks. Zaid's occasional displays of unexpected tenderness, a soft word here, a discreet gesture there, hinted at an internal conflict within him, one that Maya could sense, even as she maintained her guarded distance. Their interactions, though formal and measured, carried an undercurrent of change. While she remained deeply aware of the contract's oppressive weight, Maya could not entirely ignore the possibility that beneath Zaid's stern exterior lay a man struggling with his own burdens and regrets. Even as Maya adjusted to the mansion's grandeur, she remained ever conscious of the sacrifices she had made. Every luxurious detail, from the elegant table settings to the meticulously maintained gardens, served as a constant reminder of the price she had paid. A price measured not only in money, but in the loss of autonomy and the eternal ache of separation from her son. And yet, in that very loss, a fragile hope began to take root. Perhaps, amidst the rigid schedules and stark opulence, there was room for transformation, a chance for the cold contract to one day give way to genuine human connection. By the end of those first few days, as the mansion settled into the quiet hum of nighttime routine, Maya resolved to face each new challenge with the determination that had carried her through the darkest moments of her past. Though the future remained uncertain and the terms of the contract unyielding, she clung to the belief that every step she took in this new world was a step toward reclaiming her dignity. And even as the mansion's vast corridors echoed with both beauty and isolation, Maya dared to imagine a day when the shackles of her past might be replaced by the promise of something real, a promise that, however distant, offered the glimmer of a better tomorrow. As the days passed, the rigid structure of the mansion became both a gilded cage and a stage for an escalating battle of wills. Zaid al-Mansur, ever determined to enforce the terms of the contract, began tightening his control over every aspect of Maya's life. He imposed strict rules governing her daily activities, from what time she rose each morning to how she was to dress at formal events. His directives were delivered with the cold precision of a man used to having his every command obeyed without question. Yet with each new decree, Maya's inner resolve hardened, and the tension between them grew more palpable. One evening, during an opulent dinner in the grand dining hall, the atmosphere was electric with unspoken conflict. Zaid, dressed immaculately in a tailored suit, introduced Maya as his special guest, in a tone that brooked no argument. The guests, elegant and refined, watched with a mix of curiosity and condescension as Maya walked beside him, her expression composed yet defiant. As they took their seats at the long polished table, the ambient light reflected off the crystal glasses and ornate silverware, contrasting sharply with the storm brewing in Maya's eyes. When Zaid casually remarked about the necessity of order in their arrangement, Maya's thoughts churned with a quiet fury. She clenched her hands in her lap, each subtle gesture a silent act of resistance. In the quiet aftermath of dinner, in the privacy of a softly lit corridor, Maya found her voice. "Zaid," she began, her tone low but resolute, "I did not agree to be a possession, nor did I sign up to have my life dictated down to every minute detail." Her words, though measured, carried the weight of years of unspoken struggle. Zaid paused, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly as he absorbed her challenge. "You entered into this agreement willingly, Maya," he replied coolly, "and you knew the conditions. My duty is to ensure that everything proceeds according to plan." But even as he spoke, there was a tremor in his voice, a hint that the perfect mask of control was beginning to crack. Over the following days, the conflict between enforced order and personal autonomy intensified. Zaid's attempts to rearrange Maya's schedule became more invasive. He began to dictate not only her professional appointments, but also her social interactions. In one instance, he rescheduled a meeting that Maya had been looking forward to, claiming it was necessary for the smooth running of his business. Maya's frustration boiled over as she confronted him in a quiet study lined with rich mahogany shelves. "You cannot simply erase my choices with a mere command," she said, her voice trembling with a blend of anger and sorrow. "I am not a tool to be manipulated for your convenience." Her eyes, shining with unshed tears, challenged him to acknowledge the depth of her sacrifice. For his part, Zaid found himself increasingly conflicted. The more he pushed to maintain the contract's rigid terms, the more he sensed a shift in Maya, a defiant spirit that refused to be broken. In moments of solitude, as he sat alone in his expansive office overlooking the manicured gardens, Zaid would replay their arguments in his mind. He recalled the look in Maya's eyes when she declared her independence and wondered if he had underestimated her strength. There were fleeting instants when he caught himself admiring her resilience, a sentiment that clashed with his original intent to dominate the arrangement. Though he tried to dismiss these thoughts as mere anomalies, they began to erode the certainty of his own convictions. Amidst the battles of control, subtle gestures of humanity started to emerge. One afternoon, as Maya walked through the mansion's serene garden, she noticed Zaid quietly observing her from behind a tall hedge. For a moment, their eyes met, his filled with an intensity that betrayed a flicker of vulnerability, hers reflecting cautious defiance. Neither spoke. The silence between them was charged with unspoken emotions and the realization that their interactions were evolving beyond the boundaries of a mere contract. Later that evening, when Maya was alone in her room, she found a single white rose placed delicately on her bedside table, a small act of kindness that both perplexed and moved her. In a rare moment of unguarded conversation, Zaid attempted to bridge the growing chasm between them. "Maya," he said softly as they passed each other in the corridor, "I have always believed that order is the only way to secure our futures. Yet, in our interactions, I sense something different. Perhaps there is more to this arrangement than simply fulfilling a contract." His admission, tentative as it was, stirred conflicting emotions within Maya. While her instinct urged her to remain wary, a small part of her yearned for the possibility that Zaid might be capable of change, a hope that, despite everything, he could come to see her as a person rather than a mere object of a business deal. As the mansion's opulent nights gave way to quiet mornings, the tension between them began to soften, replaced by a gradual, uncertain thaw. Their conversations, once terse and laden with unyielding commands, grew in length and substance. Over shared cups of tea in the library, surrounded by the comforting rustle of pages and the soft glow of antique lamps, both began to divulge fragments of their pasts. Maya spoke of the sacrifices she had made for Adam, of the relentless battles against poverty and despair, while Zaid, in measured tones, hinted at the burdens he carried as the heir to a vast, unforgiving empire. These moments, though sparse and cautious, laid the groundwork for a connection that transcended the cold terms of their contract. Yet, for every small victory of vulnerability, the looming weight of the agreement remained ever present, a reminder that every gesture of tenderness was interwoven with the painful reality of their circumstances. Each day, as they navigated the labyrinth of their shared existence, both Maya and Zaid found themselves at a crossroads. Torn between the obligations imposed by the contract and the emerging, Zaid admitted in a hushed tone, "I have spent so many years chasing success at any cost, and in doing so, I lost sight of what truly matters. Meeting you has shown me that genuine connection, vulnerability, and love are far more valuable than any legacy I might build alone." Maya listened, her heart softening as she recognized the sincerity in his words. Though her past was marred by pain and sacrifice, she could see in Zaid's eyes the beginnings of a man ready to change, to become someone who valued her for who she was, not merely as a means to an end. As night fully enveloped the mansion, they returned to the expansive living room where, for the first time in a long while, laughter mingled with the quiet murmur of heartfelt conversation. The once oppressive contract was now a distant memory, replaced by tentative plans for a future together. In a simple yet profound ceremony held in the mansion's lush garden, a celebration attended by close friends and loyal staff, the couple exchanged vows not as a continuation of a transactional arrangement, but as a promise to build a life based on mutual respect, love, and forgiveness. Zaid's vows were earnest and reflective. "I promise to honor your strength, to learn from my past, and to cherish every moment with you and your son. I will spend my life proving that my love is genuine." Maya, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of the moment, replied, "I choose you, not because of the contract we once shared, but because you have shown me that redemption is possible, that together we can create a home filled with love and understanding." In the days that followed, the mansion transformed from a symbol of enforced destiny into a nurturing space where genuine family life could blossom. Zaid and Maya embraced their new beginning with cautious optimism, aware that the road ahead would still present challenges and lingering scars. Yet, every shared smile, every quiet conversation over breakfast, and every gentle reminder of their commitment to one another served to fortify their bond. The future, though uncertain, shimmered with the promise of healing and the hope of building a true family. Adam's laughter filled the halls once again, and in a tender moment that encapsulated their journey, Zaid embraced Maya as they watched the sunrise over the desert, each ray of light a symbol of renewal and a testament to the power of forgiveness. Thus, beneath the vast Arabian sky, with the mansion bathed in the soft glow of a new day, Zaid and Maya stepped forward together, leaving behind the cold confines of their former agreement. Their story, once defined by a merciless contract, had evolved into one of love, redemption, and the promise of a future where every heartbeat echoed with hope. The shadows of the past would always linger, but now they were tempered by the strength of a bond that had been forged in the crucible of suffering and emerged, at long last, into the light.
Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell